I want to talk about this show of force and how so many of the women that we heard from had not spoken before, and it was obviously a very big deal. And the reason that they decided to come forward and be a part of this very large group is because they are trying to get just at least a handful of Republicans to vote with most of the Democrats on what is known as a discharge petition in order to go around the House Republican leadership and force the Justice Department to release all of the Epstein files.
Yeah, and Dana, you raise an interesting point, because what we've seen also starting yesterday is that Republicans in the House, released their own volume of Epstein files through the House Oversight Committee. They're really trying to make the case to Republicans that we're doing enough. There's legislation that will be on the floor this afternoon that will kind of symbolically say the U.S. House supports the House Oversight Committee's continued investigation. They're announcing additional subpoenas. So what we're seeing from Republicans is we're doing enough already. We don't need the discharge petition. And so today's press conference comes in that context of the survivors of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell saying, no, what is already underway is not enough, because it is not everything. Even the documents that were released yesterday, the criticism was it wasn't new information, it's what we already know. And what these survivors are saying, what their attorneys are saying, is that they know there is more that is still secret, and Massey and Ro Khanna are leading the effort to get it all released.
And so what Republican leaders are doing is trying to give most of their conference, their fellow Republicans, a political off-ramp with that resolution. And that's why this press conference was so fascinating, because, as you said, the members, but also the lawyers and the survivors were saying, no, don't buy it. We need everything to be released. I do want to reference what President Trump said, and you heard it live just a few moments ago, once again, as he has now many times, calling the Jeffrey Epstein thing a hoax. And want you to listen to two of the survivors specifically calling out President Trump on his accusation.
President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation. Please use that influence and power to help us, because we need it now and this country needs it now.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. It reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax, because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
And again, that was the president speaking moments live in the Oval Office, right after these women begged him to forced the Justice Department to release the documents and said it wasn't a hoax.
Yeah, and on top of that, this line that it's a Democratic hoax is new in the last several months. This isn't something that President Trump had been calling a hoax for years. You even heard the attorneys for Epstein survivors there talking about how Donald Trump used to be helpful to him back in 2009. And we know that President Trump had at certain points said that they should be released. All of the files should be released. Now we're in this point, it's not just the Republicans in leadership, it's also the White House. That is their line as well. The Department of Justice is doing everything already. We don't need this petition. That is what they are saying, because of course we heard the Massey accusation that the White House was putting on a pressure campaign on these Republicans not to sign on to this petition. There is one other part of that outside press conference that I did want to bring up, because I think it does play into the Justice Department and President Trump, which was when the survivors were asked about Ghislaine Maxwell sitting down with Todd Blanche. And it did seem as though at least some of them wanted to speak after they heard her voice, after she got this big public platform because the Department of Justice had released those tapes. And it was really emotional hearing them talk about Ghislaine Maxwell and all the things that she had put them through, in addition to Jeffrey Epstein, and comparing it to the fact that she then had this platform and that people shouldn't be listening to what she had to say because she was part of this as well. All of this is to say that whatever the Department of Justice is doing, whatever they're doing on Capitol Hill in terms of turning these over, it's not going away. And now you're hearing it from the survivors themselves, many of whom, as you noted, hadn't spoken out before, meaning that the tide is just rising.
I wanted you to weigh in 1 second, but you cover this White House. You sort of understand Donald Trump and the people around him. What kind of impact is that going to have on him? I mean, I would say that you could hear the tone of his voice, not just his words, that seemed to have a little impact, but are there going to be ramifications that will make anything change? I know that's maybe a hard question to answer now.
More of an impact is the fact that news networks were taking the Epstein survivors on TV instead of his meeting right now in the Oval Office, meaning that he was seeing it show up on his multi-screen that people were listening to these survivors. I also think that we've come to a point, particularly in the last several months, where it's not that the survivors themselves are the ones who are going to necessarily have an impact on him, but they are now coordinating with these right-wing fans of Donald Trump's who also want the information out there.
It was notable because I was watching. It was on the screens except for a screen.
Not every network.
A screen that has 3 letters, and it's an animal.
I agree with you that the president's frustration was clear. It doesn't sound like it was frustration with the Justice Department for not releasing the information.
Exactly.
His frustration, that was very clear in the Oval Office today, is that he knows this is not going away. And he has which is a very odd position for Donald Trump to be in, he has no way to program this away from attention. And that clearly is frustrating him. I would also note, I mean, first of all, if you ever thought in a million years you would see like a Ro Khanna, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie press conference, I mean, it's just like, and so when you hear the survivors say this is not political, and you heard that was a repeated talking point here, what Johnson, as you noted, is trying to give, Massie called it a fig leaf. All things can be true. That measure can go forward. The Oversight Committee can continue to do its work. But why should that negate the Justice Department heeding the call of these survivors and releasing more information?
So this is an issue that is not going away on Capitol Hill anytime soon. You'll forgive me in advance as I'm looking over my shoulder, just in case the speaker strolls by me, as the House just started voting here a couple of minutes ago. But what he told my colleague Kyle Stewart literally minutes before I came to talk to you, Katie, is he once again praised the victims and survivors for coming forward. He said, it is not an easy thing to do, but he also, as he's been saying consistently, criticized the discharge petition itself, saying there are not adequate protections for victims who do not wish to be identified. Johnson saying 10 spoke out today and did so bravely, but there are 1,000, in his words, that might not want to be identified. Even though Massie and Khanna have numerously told me, they've said publicly, that there are protections crafted in their discharge petition to prevent any of these victims' names from coming out who do not wish to be identified. Critically, Katie, what I did hear from this press conference this morning is that these women, these survivors, they're done waiting. They don't trust the government. They don't think there will be transparency at the end of this, though they are hoping that at least 2 Republicans join those other 4 who have signed on to this petition in forcing the administration's hand here. They said that they are getting together to put together their own list. One of them, Lisa Phillips, said, we know the names. We know who did this to us. And they said confidentially they're going to put together this list, although unclear if they're going to release it to the public. But ultimately, they said this isn't our job. It's on the DOJ and on Congress.
So there is this argument from Donald Trump, even from people on the right. Donald Trump's calling it a hoax, but he's also saying, Tom, that DOJ is releasing information. They're giving it to the House. They did that interview with Maxwell. Is this information that is new?
No, most of it is our court filings that we've reviewed several times, if not dozens of times. There's the files that were provided by public information request from the Palm Beach County State's Attorney's Office in Florida. So that information has been out there. Those were the original investigative files, along with the Palm Beach Police Department. So those are contained within there. It's all the public filings in the Maxwell case, which are voluminous. And there are a number of filings from the Epstein case as well. A lot of those things, members of Congress talked about redactions today. By the way, those redactions are court ordered, so that's nothing that Congress is going to get around. That's a judicial branch function. So the challenge here going forward is the limited new information that we have are redacted documents that show flights and trips that Jeffrey Epstein took with a number of other individuals leading up to 2019. That includes international travel, because that would have obviously involved Customs and Border Protection. But the names of those on the flights, not just the pilot or the captain, members of the crew, those are redacted, but additional males and females, those names are redacted as well. So there's nothing on there that provides any new information as far as who Epstein was traveling with. People got initially excited because there was some financial information that was all made public as part of the Epstein bail application when he was first arrested. So really, there's not much more that's there. For the Justice Department to turn over more information would really start to cross some red lines for them, because in the past, they've been reticent to provide case files to Congress. They're incomplete. FBI 302s are summaries of an interview. I mean, you and I could write up a one-page summary of this show, but we wouldn't capture all the nuance, all the detail, and everything that went into it. And that's what those documents are. There's other documents in there that name, there could be a sheet that says we got a tip call saying that Katie Tur and Tom Winter are involved in a public corruption scheme in New York City. That doesn't mean it's true. It just means that they got a tip call. But can you imagine how the internet in 2025, September, would react to somebody who would get a tip on that?
This is why you don't play with conspiracy theories.
It does. And so to back it up to the reason why we're talking about this today, the victims on Capitol Hill, the emotion there was so raw still. And they talked about on several occasions, every single time this comes up in the news, all of these stories that have no basis in truth. Every time they hear it on the radio or listen to a podcast on the way to drop their kids off at school, it's what parents are talking about at schools.
Trump just got called out by the Epstein's victims. And this time, they are not holding back. Survivors. Many speaking for the very first time are demanding Congress force the release of the Epstein files, and they are putting Trump right in the spotlight. At a powerful press conference, these women said that Trump called a Democrat hoax is their life trauma. One survivor, a registered Republican, even invited Trump to meet her face to face so he could no longer deny the truth. But instead of compassion, Trump brushed them off, claiming it's all fake news, all politics. Here is the problem for Trump. The victims aren't just begging anymore. They are threatening actions. They say if the Dodge and Congress don't release the full Epstein file, they will create their own list of names. Let that sink in. These women claim they know who did this, and they are ready to expose it themselves. And remember, Trump once promised to release all the files, but now that his names keep surfacing in connections to Epstein and Maxwell, suddenly it's all hoax. Suddenly it's irrelevant. That's not just hypocrisy. That's fair. Even Republicans on Capitol Hill are feeling the heat as survivors are calling out the political stalling and demanding real accountability. This scandal is not going away. And for Trump, it's turning into a nightmare for his own making. So here's the question. If the survivors really do drop their own list of names, do you think Trump's name will be on it? And if it is, should he finally face real consequences? Drop your thoughts below, hit like so more people see this story, and don't forget to subscribe, because this fight for truth is only just beginning. Thank you for watching my videos.